Temple Milwaukee, thank you for joining us today. On behalf of our Temple Milwaukee board, our new board chair, Lori Richards, I welcome each of our Temple Milwaukee members and our guests today to our virtual May programming meeting. A bit of a different setting than we had anticipated and when we were figuring out the schedule for our program meeting, but typically we are in person, but it's so wonderful that you have joined us in this virtual environment. We trust you are staying safe and healthy. Temple Milwaukee continues to adapt to our new normal, as well as continuing to support and engage our more than 425 members. So thank you all for being with us today. Before we jump into today's presentation, a couple of Tempo announcements that I want to make sure I get out to all of our members and those of you on the call. On May 1st, as many of you know, Temple Milwaukee marked the start of our new fiscal year. So you can see on the screen all of last year's highlights. We had so many wonderful achievements. Hopefully you've had an opportunity to listen to the annual meeting, which we held in April. If not, there is a recording and you can find it on our website, or it's been in our Monday message for the last several weeks and we can send a link. But with the start of our new year also means the renewing your commitment to Temple Milwaukee. You should have received a notice of your Temple Milwaukee membership dues for the upcoming year. Given this is a challenging time, we want to support our members by offering payment options to renew your dues. So please email us at info@templemilwaukee.org to learn more. We do have an extended renewal period until June 30th to renew your membership dues. So let us know if you have any questions. In addition, 2 new features as we are navigating our new normal, this new virtual normal, was the start of our Tempo Talks webinar series. So if you have not yet attended one of these, we really encourage you to do so. These are weekly webinars that we started just around when all the COVID developments were happening at the end of March, early April. And it was an idea to really engage with our Tempo members, as well as share the expertise of our Tempo leadership. So, you know, women that from a variety of different industries, providing content on anything and everything COVID. So our next one is on Friday, tomorrow at 3 p.m. Show your support, lessons learned from 3 nonprofit leaders. So we'll hear from Patty Gorski, Jerry House, and Linda Benfield on how they've been able to navigate. And then we will continue these sessions on Friday, May 29th throughout the summer as well. So I really encourage you to attend. They're really great sessions. And then in addition, we want to continue this conversation. So we were missing the programming in person. We're also missing the networking opportunity in person. So our answer to that are our Tempo Talk Backs, which is a way or a method for us to continue that conversation. So whatever content is being discussed on a Friday call, the following Tuesday, we will be discussing in a more casual, happy hour kind of social atmosphere as well. So I encourage you to attend on May 26th. You do not have to have attended the Friday session, but if the topic really interests you, we encourage you to join that session. That is all. That is kind of what we've been doing from Tempo Talks, from how we're continuing to engage with our members. If you have any questions, do not hesitate to reach out to our office or email us at the info box at templemilwaukee.org. At this time, I am going to turn it over to Kelly Renz to introduce today's keynote speaker and today's presentation.
Thanks so much, Jen. Welcome, everyone. I'm Kelly Renz, CEO of the Novo Group. I'm also a Temple Milwaukee board member and also a program committee member. So glad to be able to bring this material to you. Really looking forward to today's activities and information. But before I introduce our keynote speaker today, we have a few housekeeping items if you're newer to Zoom. So if this is your first one, please note that all of you will be in a muted and disabled camera or video setting for the duration of the presentation. So should you have a question today for our speaker, Kathy, please use the Q&A feature, which you'll see at the bottom of your screen. We will answer as many of the questions as we can after the presentation is completed. We will do follow-up on questions that we are unable to get to if we aren't able to summarize them together today. So I am so excited to be able to introduce you to our speaker today. I've gotten to know Kathy pretty well over the last number of months. So Kathy Henrich is the CEO of the Milwaukee Tech Hub Coalition. Kathy has over 25 years of experience in the technology industry, both having led executive leadership of sales and partnership organizations, including a startup between large corporate partners. In 2017, she dedicated herself to ensuring individuals and organizations have the skills to succeed in the era of artificial intelligence and automation by pursuing her master's in workforce and talent development from LSU. As if that's not enough, most recently, Henrich also served as the Senior Manager of Future of Workforce at Accenture, where she leveraged her line executive experience to help clients with organizational design, talent planning, and upskill planning, as well as change management required for the digital transformation. In addition, she's been involved in many tech and talent nonprofit projects in Wisconsin. So without further ado, I am going to turn this over to Kathy. Welcome, Kathy. So glad to have you.
Hey, thank you very much, Kelly. Boy, it seems like a long time ago that we were talking at 6 in the morning as we got ready for this, or as I started interviewing with you. Just FYI, I am disabled from sharing my screen. So if somebody can allow me to do that, that would be helpful. Sorry, we should have tested that. There we go. Okay, so let me get this going. Apologize everyone for that. So hopefully everyone can see my screen at this point in time. So first of all, as you think about the Milwaukee Tech Hub Coalition, what I'm going to do today is first of all talk about what is the coalition at a very high level, what are the goals and objectives of it. And then what I was asked to do is really talk about my career and how it got me here and what were some of the lessons learned along the way that kind of influence my approach here to the leadership position. And then we'll talk about how that's manifesting. I started as the CEO at the end of January. And actually just joined Tempo in the last month as I kind of refocused my career here in Milwaukee, and I'm really privileged to be able to do so. So first of all, the Milwaukee Tech Hub Coalition, it has a bold goal. It has the goal of doubling the amount of tech talent here in the Milwaukee region over the next 5 years. And if you look at the numbers, that means scale, right? We have about 76,000 tech employees today. And that means doubling it means another 76,000. When you add into that likely retirements, et cetera, we could be talking about 100,000 people. So when we talk about this, you're going to see that what our focus is really systematic and supports to really drive the entire ecosystem forward. And that's done through kind of these 4 focuses on driving demand for job and also focusing on the supply side of the equation as well. And I'll come back to that. But really the reason that we're all in this is, first of all, to drive employer success. The reality is there's not enough tech talent here in Milwaukee or in the country in general. And therefore, there is a huge need to create and drive additional tech talent just to have our employers be successful. It also leads to organizational success as they adopt digital strategies. It leads to innovation, but most importantly, it leads to regional economic success. Tech jobs have about a 4 to 5 multiplier effect, and that drives our economy and also leads to individual success as well. So we're really in this to think about this from all of those tiers of how do I drive individual, organization, and regional success. With that said, I'm going to transition this to that kind of career slash how does that change my outlook. I'm actually trying something new. I saw a presentation done by the CIO of Harley, and she compared her Harley trips to her career. Now, I am not nearly that interesting, But there are some things that I think I've learned throughout the years that I think are pretty interesting and definitely affect my outlook on how I approach this role. And the first of them is, in my career, I've always believed in, I'll call it learning, not necessarily leveling. And as I start each of these sections, I'm going to talk about a piece of advice, whether bad or good, and then how that related to me, and then the business side. So the piece of advice I want to talk about here is, and you guys have probably all gotten this question, who do you want to be when you grow up? What do you want your career to look like 5 years from now, 10 years from now, etc.? I hated that question, and I still hate that question, because if you had asked me 5 years ago that this would be what I would be doing, I'd have no idea that that's where I would end up. I believe that our best way of driving our careers is to continue learning, whether that's a straight line or whether it's kind of a windy road. And frankly, specifically for women, I think we find it to be more of a windy road than we do that straight line. And, you know, I've actually very intentionally taken back levels in my career. One of them, when Kelly talked about the startup that I did between IBM and Johnson Controls around smarter buildings, I did that very intentionally, but it was a step backwards from a leveling perspective. But the reason I did it is I looked at my plan of where I needed to grow skills, and it hit every single box. It was international, it was software and services, it was emerging technologies, it was working in a startup environment, it was driving a partnership, all things I had wanted to do. I did it all at once. Not the way I'd actually give career advice, but I chose to do it all at once. And the funny part is I spoke about this job and we, talked about experiences. I found myself going back to that experience specifically because I had learned so much, and it was so different than anything else I had done in driving a startup environment. So that learning is very intentional. But I also did it another time. Kelly mentioned the fact that I went back and got my master's in workforce and talent development. And I had run within IBM, $600 million businesses. And the role of consulting was very different, right? It was driving an individual corporation forward from a consulting perspective. And in many ways, I actually considered it almost an internship, but it was exactly where I needed to grow. It was in growth in HR, it was growth in consulting, it was growth in using my master's and applying it to a real life environment. And as I take these lessons, so I'm so glad I've taken the approach of learning, not worrying about the level, because frankly, business is the same way. We are going to make mistakes. We are going to go backwards at times. Our overall goal is to go forward, but there are times that it doesn't look as pretty as we'd like it to be. It doesn't look like that straight line. And we have to be resilient, and we can't give up. And, I always remember a piece of advice that I'd prefer, which is you're never as good as some people say you are, and you're never as bad as they say you are as well. And I think keeping that in perspective and realizing what your plan is and what your goals are propel you forward regardless of what the external measures of that are. So that's my first piece of advice. My second piece of advice is to take the road less traveled. And I think a good piece of advice I've gotten throughout my career on this one is go to where the puck is going, not where it's been. And when I set out to get my master's in workforce and talent development, specifically focused on AI and automation and how we prepare the workforce for that, that was 2017. That was not a popular topic. And I did it very specifically because I saw some trends happening in my business where we were automating, and unfortunately we were letting people go as opposed to bringing them along with that transition. But I could see that that was going to happen in every industry. And at the same time, I looked at where I had been successful, and it was around that talent transformation to drive business results. So I chose very intentionally to bring those two together and go focus on getting credentialized around that area. And honestly, it was probably one of the best decisions I ever made because nobody else was doing it. And therefore, it made me unique and different in my career. Very rarely do you say somebody's been a tech industry executive and they also are working on workforce and talent development. And that combination made me unique. But it also, I have to admit, the external perceptions of it early on were kind of weird. I remember telling somebody at a baseball game about this, and they looked at me like I had two heads, literally. And so my perspective on this is you got to feel like it's okay, right? It's okay to take a risk. And I feel this way with the Tech Hub as well. So as I think about the Tech Hub and other cities, some of the other cities have been working on being tech hubs for 25 years plus. I can look at them and I can learn from their experiences, but I can't take that exact same pathway, or I'll just be 25 years behind all the time. We have to come up with some of those roads less traveled in order to jump ahead and really be known for the tech hub that we already are, but we have to be doing it in a different way. So sometimes that, there's not a clear playbook, and we have to be willing to take a risk based on trends that we're seeing and take advantage of those trends. Okay, so my next one here is around priorities create balance. And another good piece of advice I've gotten throughout my career is the fact that, you can be anything you want to be. You just can't be it all at once. And that is so true. There have been times in my career that I've prioritized one, thing over another. I literally worked part-time for 7 years for IBM. Again, continuing to learn as I went, but at that time it was important to prioritize my young kids. I also took a leave of absence to get that master's degree. Pretty risky, right? To step away from an executive position, no idea where that was going to lead. But it was the right priority at the time. And those are big decisions, but I think we do it every single day as well. Mine happens to be I have to exercise every day, and I have to prioritize that. And I hope maybe somebody's out for a walk while they're listening to this. But as I think about that, we have to kind of categorize and decide where our priorities are. And frankly, that's the same in the Tech Hub. I mean, honestly, I feel like every day I can't go fast enough to transform this region. And I could work 24/7 trying to create that impact. But at the same time, none of us run like that, right? And so we have to prioritize and start to balance. And when we do that, we can make calm, informed decisions and continue to prioritize and rebalance. It's just an important thing that we do, and one that is a perspective I take into the Tech Hub. My next one is community is absolutely critical. And again, another good piece of advice in my career was when I became a manager, somebody said to me, it's no longer about what you do as an individual, it's about what you enable others to do. And honestly, I translate that now into the current role of it's not only what I do, but in what I enable the community to do. And that counts for direct reports, that goes for peers, it goes for external partnerships. It is a community coming together to drive results as opposed to one individual. And I take that into the Tech Hub because myself and my Chief Learning Development Officer are not going to double the amount of tech talent in the region alone. There are fabulous things going on in our community, which will all contribute to it. And that partnership together, all going in the same direction, is what's going to make us successful. In fact, I was humbled the other day. I had made a comment in a meeting late February, early March, related to a trend of onshoring. And that comment inspired them to apply for a grant that will help us grow as a region. And that's kind of the way it goes, right? We have to kind of bring all of the community together, rowing in the same direction, and we'll be very successful. But not one of us can ever do this alone. And then my last piece of advice is one of giving back. And I couldn't think of a piece of advice from my career on this one, but it's just been part of my being all of my career, whether that's to mentees, whether that's volunteering in the community. When I took my year off and did my master's degree, I spent about 40 hours a week in the community and then did my schoolwork at night, you know, volunteering in the school districts for Advancing AI Wisconsin, for the Tech Hub Coalition, et cetera. But you know, what's funny about it, at the time, I did that solely out of a desire to help. Solely out of, you know, just the feel of needing to give back, wanting to make a difference, taking some of my expertise and giving it back. What it turned out, though, is that give back actually gave back to me as well in relationships in Milwaukee, right? That positioned me well for this role, for an understanding of the organizations in the community and resources, et cetera. Things I could not have learned in any other way. And so as the Tech Hub, I think, it's important for us to be giving back. And, you know, one of the early initiatives when COVID-19 hit was for us to try to help this issue of digital disparity that exists and try to give out, and we gave out iPads and Chromebooks to the MPS middle schoolers. But it also means giving back personally. I'm really excited to join Tempo for that reason, because I'm not part of a large organization anymore, and it allows me to give back to the community. But it also means that in everything we do, we should be thinking about not only what we will gain from it, but what others will gain from it as well. So with that said, I'm going to go on to the next one as well. And I'm going to transition a little bit, and hopefully you may not be able to see this, guys. I'm sorry about that. So what I thought I would do is talk about the Tech Hub Coalition. You already know that our goal is to double the amount of tech talent in the region over 5 years. The real question is, how do you make that happen, right? And it's important to know the history, or I think it helps to know the history of it. We had a couple of really forward-looking companies here in the region decide that this was going to be important. Now, granted, I think it started out of self-serving interest, right? They were having a hard time being able to recruit here into the region. But similar to that give back, they quickly saw that by really advancing this region as a tech hub, not only would the community benefit, but they individually as organizations would benefit as well. So Northwestern Mutual started this, Advocate Aurora joined them. They realized it was going to take more than just them. They formed it as a nonprofit back in October, and I joined in January. And now we have 20 companies that have now joined the coalition, and we continue to add companies every week to the coalition. And what's really important about that is, yes, they've all contributed financially. That's important. But just as important is they're very active in helping us prioritize and shape the efforts to have impact into the community. So they become the eyes and ears so that we're very connected to the needs of the business community and can reflect that. With that said, there's really, 6, I'll call it lanes of strategy. Originally focused on an initial 4 that were to drive demand in the region, and then added 2 to focus on the supply. So the first one is really about the vision, or what I'll call the image of the region. We call it bold vision. And it's really around how do we best portray the image of the region. Because right now, honestly, our image of a region is really one of cows and packers and cheese and sausage, etc. Nothing bad, but one that in order to be perceived as a tech hub, we need to showcase other capabilities here as well. So, you know, early things we did were things around the website and the newsletter and a large event last fall. But now we're transforming into how do we tell this broader than Milwaukee? So we're participating across the state of Wisconsin with a PR team, including Green Bay, Madison, Kenosha area, and really bringing together the community to say, what do we want to be? How do we want to be perceived around tech and innovation? And how do we tell our story outside of this region? Through the New York Times, through the Washington Post, through USA Today, all of those media. Second one is we're actually engaged right now in a national TV project that will be broadcast hopefully in August, depending on COVID-19 and production schedules. But that is allowing us to really tell the story of the fact that we already are a tech hub. It's just we're different, right? We're embedded in transforming essential industries and products and really delivering value across the world through that technology and that enhancements to solutions. So that's the first one. Second one is around the startup community. And we started this by really evaluating and seeing that we had a need for more companies to be investable ideas. And we started an incubator, 12 weeks, really working together with these companies' founders on everything from, you know, what's my value proposition? How would I make money off of that? How would I create it into a product? How would I form an organization? And starting to answer those questions. We had 50 founders participating in our first cohort and diverse from every aspect, from age, sex, racial, color of hair, all across the board. And, you know, we had out of those 50, 19 that intend to continue their program full time, which is a really cool progress and one that we expect to continue and continue to help incubate that. We're starting to work on a reverse pitch, which is where big corporates pitch their ideas, or I should say, pitch their problem statements, and the startup community responds with how they can help. As well as looking at how do we continue to advance 4M. In the tech jobs piece of it, some of you may have seen an announcement just a couple of weeks ago by Galaxy that they are creating an outsourcing center here in the Milwaukee area, and that will create up to 300 jobs starting later this fall. So that's a really exciting piece of news. And then we continue to leverage that to look at how do we recruit other tech companies here to the region, you know, through second offices, et cetera. Then if you think about the supply, part of that comes through freelancers, and our goal here is to create a unique experience for the freelancers where they are supported in a unique way and makes Milwaukee an attractive place to be a freelancer. And if you think about this, the reason we're focused here is that people go where jobs are and jobs go where there's talent. And so you always get this kind of chicken and egg that goes on. And the goal here is really to break that chicken and egg and to bring people here regardless of where their job might be. And then on supply, we're focused in the area of, we did some stuff around Hour of Code back in the December timeframe, where we helped kids understand what coding is all about. And the one that we're working on really hard right now is around virtual internships. So unfortunately, COVID-19 caused a lot of students to lose their internships. And this, you know, created, while very difficult for these students, we looked at it as a way to potentially help and also reconnect to these students in a different way than we would have had otherwise. So we're creating a virtual internship program that we're testing this summer, and we'll look at that as a potential means of going forward. And then the last one is on reskilling. We were able to get kind of an investment here in the region by Dev 10, really unique web development or web programming development opportunity where where we're able to take college students or college grads, I should say, that maybe are underemployed or are switching careers, and teach them web programming, and that allows us to create a new talent source. But we're starting to think about other non-traditional routes as well, like apprenticeship models, and how do we help the employers support those non-traditional models as well. Now, as I said kind of earlier, we can't do this by ourselves. In fact, as I look across the ecosystem, we partner across all of this, right? When we talk about attraction, we're doing that in conjunction with MMAC. When we talk about the startup community, we're doing it in conjunction with the Commons and We Pivot. We are doing, we're working with HERA, which is the Higher Education Regional Alliance, to really help them understand the needs of the employers, so students as they come out are easily employed. So across all of this, we believe it's really important to collaborate, amplify the fantastic things that different organizations are already doing, like Girls Who Code or IC Stars or any other points of pride, and then be able to fill in where those gaps are to continue to advance the ecosystem. Now, with that said, if you're interested in learning more, I thought it would be good to give you my contact information. I am happy to chat in more details about it. And I think we're going to take live questions here as well. So I'm going to stop sharing so I can see the question and answers or the Q&As that are coming forward. Okay. So the first question I see is from Carol Voss, saying, thanks for sharing your story today and the strategic agenda for the MKE Tech Coalition. With respect to building a community-wide approach in building a pipeline for tech talent, I'm grateful for your work with MPS on bridging the digital divide. MATC also has a really significant digital divide in the student population, and there are other efforts as well going on in the city. That said, do you see the opportunity to advocate for or connect the efforts and lead a citywide approach to be sure there is a long-term solution to the digital divide in the city in order to advance the tech ecosystem and build the tech workforce pipeline? So first of all, thank you very much for the question, Carol. What is great is the leadership of United Way is actually taking on this task themselves. And so we're actually going to partner with them, building on what we've already learned and some others have learned as well. So for example, I think American Family has been involved, and there's other great organizations that are working on this as well to be able to advance this. But the United Way has taken the leads and will be participating with them across that to help solve that issue. So other questions that others might have?
Kathy, we have one other question, actually a couple of other questions that have come in. One of them as kind of your perspective or how you've navigated or pivoted during COVID-19.
Yeah, it's a really good question. And it's interesting, being a startup ourselves, we partially pivoted, but we partially are forming new strategies in light of COVID-19. So like so many others, the first thing we had to do is figure out the financials, right? Because things have changed and discretionary funds are less discretionary right now to support these kinds of efforts. And so one of the things was to figure out the financials, right? And make sure we were financially solvent for the long term. The second thing is to really look at what new trends we might see as a result of this and start to put in place plans for that. So for example, the virtual internship is definitely a response to that. But there's others. The onshoring trend is one that we're starting to see, because as you think about, you know, being able to manage a remote workforce overseas that you may or may not be able to get to for 6 months, right? It's a much harder thing to manage. So we're starting to see re-onshoring of tech jobs along with the supply chain jobs. And being in a position. So Galaxy coming is a great win for the region to be able to take advantage of that trend. And then there's other ones that, you know, we're looking at as we start to build the image of the region. So for example, Milwaukee looks more attractive right now than some of the coastal cities. I would much prefer, and I think many people would much prefer, to be, you know, social distancing in a place that it's easier to do that because we have the space to do so. And so, you know, all of those are trends that we are looking at and figuring out how we, I'm careful on the words I use, right? Because this is not opportunistic, it's a reality base, right? Of what's coming and how do we best plan for that new reality. We did have to quickly pivot on our 4M incubator, because that happened right at the ending or right at the start of this. But for the most part, it's really the creation of strategies in light of the current circumstances.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And I think, you know, as a fellow nonprofit leader, I think we are, you know, navigating and planning for, I think somebody mentioned it the other day, planning for the unknown, which has been a little bit of a challenge, right, Kathy? So a couple of other questions came in. Would you comment on what the coalition is doing to lift women in tech, and any new opportunities for career transitions as jobs are eliminated for women in Milwaukee? Yeah,
good questions. So I'll take probably the first one. And so as far as we build these programs, you know, diversity and inclusion across many aspects are one of the key criteria. And here's why. I mean, if you look at our demographics of our tech population in the Milwaukee region, it is not as diverse as we would all like it to be, right? That's the reality of it. So with everything we're doing it in light of that and making sure we're as inclusive as possible. So one is very closely partnering with NCWIT. Laura Schmidt, who is our Chief Talent Development Officer, also sits on that board. So very carefully partnering there. This Dev 10 program that I mentioned, as you look at the statistics of who we're accepting in that, making sure there's equity in that, that's another way of doing that. So I just saw the class statistics the other day, and that's one of the criteria that, or one of the statistics we were given to make sure we are leading to a diverse workforce. The same thing will apply on the virtual internships, right? Making sure that we're diverse from that perspective. So I'd say at this point, we have not created something specific for women, but more made sure that we're being very inclusive in that the demographics of those that are participating are reflective of the demographics of our environment, of our ecosystem.
Sure. Perfect. Great. Thank you. And this other one is more on the personal side. So you talked a little bit about your career journey, and one of the attendees is asking, how did you decide it was time to go back to school for an additional degree? It never seems like a good time. So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, you know, this is one of those literally crazy things that, you know, happens. So for me, it was, you know, there are times in your career, there's an itch, right? And that itch is one of wanting to do more, wanting to give back, right? I had achieved what I wanted to achieve as an executive, but I felt like the need to give back more. And so it became one of those times when you start to look at, so where do I go next, right? And I use, and some other people have probably done this, right? Where am I good, right? What what skills do I have? And for me, that was around, talent development and leading to results through talent development. Where is there going to be a big need, which is in this case one of this transformation, digital transformation, then what will people pay me for, right? Just kind of, and then you figure out the pathway. I decided that the best way to do it was to take a very dedicated amount of time. Now, very few people can do that. I was exceptionally fortunate to be able to do it. And I was also very fortunate that my employer gave me a leave of absence to accomplish that as well. So, I took the year, probably one of the best years of my career. I learned more than I ever have. So, but it's hard to say how exactly you get there.
Next question, this is, are you planning for a virtual Fall X event in tech at this point? Last year's event was really amazing to connect the tech community and draw attention nationally for our tech efforts. Evolving thoughts on that? Yeah,
so thank you, Carol, for that question. The first thing that I would say is this was a decision we had to look at very early on, actually pre-COVID-19, because the intent was to transform it into more of an educational event that you would think of for career development with associated prices. So that would have meant that really your audience was the learning and development professionals and corporate budgets. So we had decided at that point to go and do some test marketing of the concept, knowing that we couldn't do it exactly the way that we had done it last year. So with that said, we had chosen to do some testing of the concept, and as we were doing that, COVID-19 hit. So what we've chosen to do is hold at this point in time and focus on other areas, and hopefully we'll look at that back in 2021 again.
Perfect. So this last question is a little bit more on the selfish side from our perspective, but you noted that you just recently joined Temple Milwaukee, and we were kind of joking when we, prior to broadcasting this webinar, is that you jumped right in, right, and stepped right into being our keynote speaker. So I think one of the things that is such great value and benefit as being a member of this organization is the strength and the breadth of expertise and experiences of our members, our 425 Temple Milwaukee members and our network. How can we support you in your efforts? What can we do as Temple Milwaukee members and as your network to help support your efforts?
Well, thank you for asking that question. And first of all, I'm really thankful, and I want to thank Kelly for the invitation to join Tempo, because as I mentioned, having been in companies of 400,000 plus people, right, you didn't have to necessarily look externally to get the mentorship or to mentor others. Most of that occurred within your organization. A little different as you join the Milwaukee community. So I'm excited to participate as personally as part of the group, both to mentor and to be mentored. So I think that's one thing. The second thing is I really look forward to learning from insights like Jenna is really appreciative of the nonprofit leaders coming together. This is my first foray into the nonprofit world. It is different, but fabulous. But that ability to connect with others is really helpful. As far as those in the community and how you can help, I mean, obviously becoming members is one way, but I think the other thing is to help us in promoting the region as a tech hub. And we're gonna be really active in starting to share cool stories of what's going on in the region. And that amplification of that voice that can occur, I think is one fabulous way. I was just looking at stats last night, and sometimes people will consider Nashville an emerging tech hub. They have less tech professionals, they have less in the tech industry, and they have less of their percentage of their economy based in tech. And I'm like, somebody did a fabulous job of marketing, right? I mean, just really fabulous. And I think that starts with us. right? It starts with all of us telling our story broader than just the Milwaukee region.
That's awesome. Well, and I will encourage you to, when you have information to share, to have it in our newsletters. We do quarterly newsletters, and happy to share any information, as well as our members can take and promote and build awareness for the Milwaukee Tech Hub. So it doesn't look like we have any additional questions. We've got about 10 minutes, so you might get some 10 minutes back to your day, but I thank you so much, Kathy. Welcome to Tempo. Welcome to your new gig as with the Milwaukee Tech Hub. It's wonderful to hear your story and the great work that you're doing. I agree. There is such an energy around and an excitement around all of the tech opportunities for Milwaukee, and whatever we can do to help spread that news, we are here. So that's really wonderful. Thank you to all of our attendees for joining us for our May program meeting. Encourage you again to reach out to Kathy if you have additional questions that haven't been answered, as well as don't forget to renew your dues. Thank you. Join us tomorrow for our Tempo Talks. Otherwise, we will see you soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.